Let's start with today's session. I don't know whether you all saw what was uploaded to the portal, the documents that were uploaded to the portal.
Yes, sir. We got.
Right. I think I uploaded around 4 or 5 financial statements as well.
Yes, it is.
Right. So just have a look at it because that is pertaining to different industries. There was a bank, there was a plantation. Likewise, it a manufacturing organization. So it will give you an idea how the financial statements differ from one to the other. Okay, and how this LKS1 works with the presentation of different financial statements. Right. So what I'm going to do is the program for today is I'm going to start off with the new topic that we are going to do. And then I will finish off the pending questions that we have, as most of you all requested on this bank reconciliation. So that I will finish off that and the sole proprietorship questions as well. Okay. So let's start with the topic that we are supposed to cover today. That is, we are going to do okay. You can see the presentation. Is it visible to you all?
Yes, sir.
Right. So what we are going to look at today is a new topic. This is known as LKS 40, right? So this is another accounting standard that we are going to look at. Of course, this is not going to be a hot topic, as I would say, where it will be tested in detail in your examination. But there could be questions here and there, or maybe adjustment could be there. So you need to know. As a result of that, you need to know what is LKS 40 talks about and how it will differentiate from one to the other. Okay, so that is what is important when it comes to presentation of financial statements. This is very, very important, where you need to know how this will get reflected in the financial statements. Right. So we are starting off with the investment property standard. What does this mean? Theoretically, when you look at a property, when you say a property, we talk about the land element pertaining to that property and the building component. Or it could be part of a building, or it could be both. So when we use the word property, it means it could be a piece of land, or it could be a piece of building, or entire building, or it could be a part of a building, or it could be both land and a building. Okay, so what are we trying to establish here is how does this relate to the standard investment property, right? So when you have a property, it has its own purposes. So we call it as where you can hold a property to earn rentals. That means you rent out the property and you earn rentals from that property. Or you can also have capital appreciation. We call it as capital appreciation. So what do you mean by capital appreciation? I will explain in a short while. So if the objective of holding this property is either to receive rentals or for capital appreciation, then that kind of a property is classified as investment property. Okay, a property which is held for rentals, or the condition should be, need not be and, it should be or. Either you can hold it for rentals or it could be for capital appreciation. If that is the case, then that property is known to be an investment property. Now, if we are not looking at these two purposes, what else could be there? That is the no path here. If you look at the no path, what is the other alternative that the person or the owner of the property has, where they can use it in the production or supply of goods or services or for administrative purposes? Now, what does this mean? You have a property, and this property is going to be used in your business. What do you mean by to be used in your business? You might put up your factory, you might put up your warehouse, you might put up your showroom. So you can do anything with that. But the ultimate result of that property is going to earn you revenue. That is what we call as use in the production or supply of goods or services. Okay. So if the particular property is deployed for the purpose of generating income, that is in the production or supply of goods or services, then it cannot be an investment property. That is what you need to understand. Or else it could be for administrative purposes. Now, when you say administrative purposes, what does that mean? You can have an office there. You might be running your business in somewhere else where your workshop or maybe the factory, all those will be there. But in order to coordinate the business, you might have a building or a property where you have your head office there for administrative purposes. So that is where your people will be get located. There you will prepare accounts, or you may your workers will come and report there. So many things can happen in that particular property. So if you are still using it for the purpose of your business related administrative purpose, then you can't call that as an investment property. Now the question comes, then it is what? Then it is what? Actually speaking, then this particular property will be known as a part of property in your fixed assets. That is the next standard that we are going to learn. Actually, I thought of covering LKS 16 and then move on to LKS 40, but I then thought like today we will do the questions, and then to cover up the time, I thought of doing this particular standard. So when it is used in the production or supply of goods or services, means this particular property will not come under investment property, but it will come under your fixed assets. So what does it mean? It will be covered by the standard LKAS 16. LKAS 16. That is the next standard that we are going to learn. Okay. So you need to be mindful about how this can be differentiated. What is a fixed asset and what is an investment property for me? We are looking at a property, its features. So if the property is held for rentals or for capital appreciation, then it is considered to be an investment property. I think someone is not muted their mic. Please check and mute. Thank you. Right? Then there could be another scenario where this particular property is held for sale. in the ordinary course of the business. In the ordinary course of the business. Now, here comes a situation where you have a property. Again, it could be a land or it could be a building, whatever, where you are using it as your business. Now, there is a clear difference here. It is not to be used in your business. This is going to be your business. What do you mean by that? You are going to do buying and selling of these properties. Buying and selling of these properties. So you might have a large plot of land where you will divide it into pieces and you will sell them. Or you might put up a property or building where you call it as a condominium, and you might sell it to people unit by unit. Okay, so here we are talking about 4 purposes. I mean, it could be classified into broader 4 purposes. What are the 4 purposes? Holding it for rentals, where you draw rental income from that building or property. Second is a capital appreciation. I will explain that. Third, you might use in the production or supply of goods or services or for administrative purposes. And fourth, where you will make use of that as your business. So it is only in the case of holding it for rentals or capital appreciation we consider it as investment property. In all other instances, we don't consider it to be an investment property. So in exams, if you are asked or you are given a scenario where you need to find out what is going to be an investment property, you have to clearly have this definition. What is it? You need to know whether this property is held for rentals or for capital appreciation. If the purposes are one of the two, or it could be both, then you have a situation of investment property. It cannot be your normal property, plant and equipment. Okay, right. So now I want to explain what is this capital appreciation is. Let us try to understand by way of this definition. Land held for long-term capital appreciation rather than for short-term sale in the ordinary course of business. Now, people might hold a property which could be a piece of land where they could have bought somewhere long time ago, but they didn't want to do anything from this property. They are just keeping it as it is. Now, you might have seen this scenario. Maybe sometimes your parents would have bought a piece of land somewhere far away, and it is just being there. Nothing is being done. You haven't constructed a house or anything. So what do you expect? The simple expectation out of that kind of a property is for the property values to go up. If you had purchased the property for 1 million, you are just keeping it for more than 10 years, means you at least expect it to be 10 million today. Now, what is this? A rise in the value of the property. That is called capital appreciation, because the money that I have invested is generally known as capital. You all already know that. So the money that I have invested, I am expecting it to appreciate. I am expecting it to appreciate. What do you mean by appreciate? The value going up. The value going up. So a land held for long-term capital appreciation rather than for short-term sale in the ordinary course of business is actually an investment property, because we already looked at the 4 purposes, and out of which one is actually for this particular purpose. You might also have a building owned by the reporting entity. Reporting entity means the business, or held by the entity under a finance lease. Now, actually speaking, the concept of finance lease and operating lease is going away with the new standard coming in, which is SLFRS 16. But in principle, what do we understand here is a building owned by the reporting entity or held by the entity under a finance lease means you are going to draw rentals. You are going to draw rentals. So when you are drawing rentals means it is again going to be an investment property. Now let's look at this example. A company owns a piece of land. The directors have not yet decided whether to build to a factory on it for use in its business or to keep it and sell it when its value has risen. Now the question is whether this is an investment property or not. That is the question. So what does the question say? There is a piece of land owned by a company. The directors have not yet decided whether to put up a building, or in other words a factory, in that particular piece of land for the purpose of using it in the business, or they have not yet decided whether to keep it and sell it when its value has gone up. Now what do you think of this in terms of whether it is an investment property or not? It is going to be a, sorry, the question is, would this be classified as an investment property under LKS 40? Right? So, of course, yes. But what is the rationale? That is what we need to understand. Under LKS 40, if an entity has not determined that it will use the land either as owner occupied property or for short-term sale in the ordinary course of business, the land is considered as being held for capital appreciation. So that is very clear. That is what we looked at initially. You saw this? If it to be an investment property, either you should earn rentals or you should keep it for capital appreciation. If you are trying to use it for a business or you are going to sell it as a piece of land, then it's not covered under investment property. So here comes a piece of land where they say they have not yet decided whether to put up a factory, nor they have decided whether to sell it in the short term. So obviously under LKS 40, if an entity has not yet decided whether to use it for the business as an owner occupied property, we call it as owner occupied property, or whether to use it as in the ordinary course of business and sell it in the short term, if they have not decided that also, that is going to be an investment property. So this difference has to be understood very, very clearly. Now let us look at what are few exceptions. What are few exceptions in investment property? So property intended for sale in the ordinary course of business. That is the fourth purpose that we discussed. If that is the purpose, then it will be like the stocks that you are going to have in your business. If you are holding stocks in your business, that is like similar to having a property which is intended for sale in the ordinary course of business. Then it is covered not under LKS 40 or not under LKS 16. It is going under LKS 2, which is known as inventories. The second part or the second type of exception is where property being constructed or developed on behalf of third parties, where we call them as under construction contracts, which is not under our purview, so you don't have to worry. LKS 2, of course, we will learn, but LKS 11 will not be part of your syllabus because it relates to construction. The companies which are in the field of construction, they will only look into those standards. The third one, obviously, the owner-occupied property, which is the standard that we are to learn next, LKS 16. And property under finance lease, which is in the older standard, it was LKS 17, but the new standard is SLFRS 16. And then, of course, biological assets, which is again not applicable for us. It is LKS 41. LKS 41. So I explained at the very beginning what is biological asset is. Biological asset is like where you have the tea plantations, right? So mineral reservoirs, all those will form part of biological assets. So these are exceptions. You need to know when these type of examples are given, those are not investment property. If it is investment property, it will be covered under LKS 40. Definitions. So what do you mean by owner-occupied property? Owner-occupied property is a property held by the owner for use in the production or supply of goods or services or for administrative purposes. Now, this theoretical definition will be required because in examination, sometimes you might have to write what is owner-occupied property is. So if there is a question like what is owner-occupied property, then you need to know how to write the definition. Okay, so owner-occupied property means a property which is owned by the owner and it is deployed in the business for production or supply of goods or services or for administrative purposes. Fair value. Fair value is a very common term that we make use of in accounting standards. So what is mean? Fair value is the price that would be received to sell an asset or paid to transfer a liability in an orderly transaction between market participants at the measurement date. So now this is somewhat a theoretical definition for fair value. But in simple terms, what is fair value? Fair value is the market value. Fair value is the market value. So if you are entering into a transaction where there has to be two knowledgeable parties, you can't have a transaction with a person who is not knowledgeable about the particular transaction. Okay, that is why we say it has to be an orderly transaction where you enter into a transaction with a knowledgeable party, right? So when you enter into a transaction with a knowledgeable party to buy or sell an asset, the value that is determined by the two parties is generally known as the fair value, or that is what is called as the market value. But sometimes what happens, they are due to aggressive negotiation, or maybe what should I say, we should not use the word influence, because if there is influence, then it is not an orderly transaction. Okay, so due to aggressive negotiation, there could be a reduction in the value compared to the market value. But in a genuine transaction, the value agreed by the two parties, the market participants, will be the fair value. And what is important here is to note that it has to be at the measurement date. Now, this measurement date is very, very important. Measurement date is very, very important. What do you mean by that is measurement date is the date on which you are doing the reporting. The date on which you are doing the reporting. Very, very important. So, in other words, the fair value is the market value that is acceptable between the market participants at the reporting date, or we call it as the measurement date. Next term is the cost. So cost, of course, all of us know what is cost is. The price that you pay to purchase an asset. The price that you pay to purchase an asset, right? So how do we define this is cost is the amount of cash or cash equivalent paid or the fair value of other consideration given to acquire an asset at the time of its acquisition or construction. Now we will look at the same definition, some of these definitions again in LK 16 also. So I will just try to explain it briefly here. Cost is the amount of cash or cash equivalent that you will pay to acquire an asset. Acquire an asset means purchase an asset. Okay. So acquisition can fall into two categories. Either you can acquire by title or you can acquire it by constructing it. Now you have a piece of land, on that you put up a building. So over the period of putting up the building, you will spend a lot of money. Now all these money that you are going to spend is part of the cost of the building. Part of the cost of the building. Okay. So cost means the amount of cash or cash equivalent paid to acquire an asset. Carrying amount. Sorry. Carrying amount is the amount at which an asset is recognized in the statement of financial position. So you know what is statement of financial position now? That is the balance sheet, which will show your assets, liabilities, and equity. So under assets, if you have a investment property, what is the value that you will show for that investment property is known as the carrying amount. Is the carrying amount. So now we are going to look at what is called as a recognition. How do we recognize an investment property, or when do we recognize an investment property? Investment property should be recognized as an asset when two conditions are met. When two conditions are met. So this is very common. The conditions that we are going to look at is also applies for any asset that you may recognize under LK 16 also. Okay, you will see the same thing again under LK 16. So what are the two conditions? The condition is that it is probable that the future economic benefits that are associated with the investment property will flow to the entity. Very simple. What do you mean by that? It is probable. That means you are sure that there will be future economic benefits. That means you will have monetary benefits that are associated with the investment property. Now, you know, when it is defined as an investment property, there could be two things happening. One is either you might draw rentals or you might keep it for capital appreciation. So when you keep it for capital appreciation, obviously your value of the property might go up. So actually economic benefits are going to flow to the entity in the future. Alternatively, if you are going to hold it for rentals, then what is going to happen? the company is going to earn money in the future. So there is a monetary benefit or economic benefit in the future. So when can you recognize an investment property? It is only then it is probable that the future economic benefits are associated with the investment property will flow to the entity. That is one condition. The second condition is where the cost of the investment property can be measured reliably. So if you have spent money to purchase a property which is with the intention of an investment property, and if you know the value certainly, that itself is sufficient for you to recognize it as an investment property. So if you purchase a plot of land with the purpose of holding it for capital appreciation, the value that you pay will become the cost. So you are certain with the cost. Second condition, whether you are going to have future economic benefits. Yes, because I am going to hold it for capital appreciation, then there is going to be future economic benefits. As a result, I could easily recognize this as an investment property. Now we talk about the initial measurement of investment property. Now, what do you mean by initial measurement is on day one, what you will do with the investment property. An investment property should be measured initially at its cost, including transaction costs. So you go and negotiate with a seller and you purchase a plot of land. So the price you might pay will be your cost. Okay. And at the outset, let's say you might also incur a commission to be paid to one of the persons who involved in arranging this for you. That will be your transaction cost. So the property should be initially measured at its cost, the price you have paid, including any other transactional costs that you may have incurred. So if I had paid 5 million to purchase the land plus another 1% or 3% as commission, so the total value will be the 5 million cost plus the 3% commission on 5 million. A property interest held under a lease and classified as an investment property shall be accounted for as it were a finance lease. Now, this might look like a complicated definition. What it means is, if you have taken a property under a lease arrangement, for leasing arrangement, then you will consider it as a finance lease. Finance lease means where you will purchase an asset where the ownership will not immediately come to you, but it will be given to you at the end of the lease period. Now, this you will do it for even in your businesses, respective banks, you might be doing leases. So same as that. Now, what happens here? Over the lease period, you will pay rentals to the lessor. Lessor means the person who has leased the asset to you. So, to the lessor, you will keep on paying rentals. You will keep on paying rentals. This we call it as the subsequent measurement. Now, let's say you have purchased an investment property on 25th of, let's say today, September 2021. So that is your initial measurement. Now we are talking about the subsequent measurement. Subsequent measurement means the day when you are doing your financial reporting. So let's assume that you are a company doing annual financial reporting and your financial year closes on 31st December. So when you reach 31st December 2021, you need to ascertain what is the value of this property. Let's say, for example, you have purchased an investment property today that is 25th September, by paying 10 million. So you today take it to your finance statement of financial position at 10 million. You will say investment property 10 million, and you will pay the cash 10 million. So that is the double entry I'm talking about. Debit investment property, credit cash. Okay. So whenever I talk about transactions like this, you need to realize and understand what is the underlying double entry. Then only when it comes to the examination, it will be easy for you to understand and record transactions what is given in the question paper. Right. So you purchase the property today by paying 10 million. So you will debit investment property 10 million, credit cash 10 million. Transaction done. Now you go to 31st December. Now what does the standard LKS 40 says? On the subsequent measurement date, LKS 40 requires an entity to choose between two models. So 25th September, they say you realize it or recognize it on cost plus transaction cost. Earlier we saw that, isn't it? An investment property should be measured initially at its cost, including transaction cost. Now we are talking about subsequent measurement. So that is on 31st December 2021, the immediate financial reporting. So on that day, they say you can choose one of the two models that are given. What are the two models? Model 1, we call it as the fair value model. The fair value model, very, very important. Fair value model. So what it means, at the reporting date, you need to find out what is the fair value of your investment property. Now I told you, fair value is the market value for a transaction between two knowledgeable parties. Okay. But it need not be always a transaction to go through. You can always get a market value for any asset that you might have. So that market value is what is called the fair value. So in order to measure this property on the subsequent date, that is the reporting date, the first model that you can use is called as the fair value model. The second model is very straightforward, which is known as the cost model. We call it as the cost model. So what it means? Cost model means now you have spent 10 million, keep it at 10 million. No changes. You can keep on adding any other cost that you might have, but it will continue to be at this 10 million forever until you get rid of this asset. But under the first method, which is known as the fair value model, there is a small complication. That is what we need to know. So whatever the policy the company might choose, it should be applied to all of its investment property. What does that mean? If you have 3 investment properties, let's say A, B, and C. Now this A is located in, let's say, in Colombo 7, where the prices are very high. The other 2 are out of Colombo. Maybe let's say park it as relatively lower in prices. So the value at Colombo 7 is very, very high. So as a result, you apply the fair value model. But value of the properties which are out of Colombo is very, very low. So you apply it with the cost model. That is not permitted. That is not permitted because A, B, C, all 3 are investment properties. So if you choose to apply the fair value model, then you need to apply across all 3 properties. A, B, C, all should be under fair value model. If you choose the cost model, then all 3 should be under the cost model. Okay. So this is something like where you do a revaluation of your property at the reporting date. Revaluation of your property at the reporting date. Let us talk about the fair value model. Now, what is this fair value model? Fair value model is where at the reporting date, if you are doing the reporting annually, as at the reporting date, you will get hold of a good valuer. There are professional people who does valuations, property valuations. We call them as valuers, professional valuers. So you get hold of a professional valuer and you need to ask them to do a valuation. So at the reporting date, let's say 31st December, you request this person to do a valuation. So he does the valuation and he gives you a report, so for which you have to pay. According to the valuation report, he has mentioned that the property is worth, let's say, 15 million. So at the initial date, which is September 25th today, you purchased it for 10 million. But by December 31st, this person says it is 15 million. The value is 15 million. I'm just taking an example. Okay. So within 3 months, how come it is more by 5 million? Don't ask that question. It's just a number that we are taking. So what do we understand here? The property value has gone up. Gone up by how much? 5 million. Now, what do we do with this 5 million? That is the big question. What do we do with this 5 million? Very, very important question. This 5 million is considered as a fair value gain. We call it as a fair value gain on investment property, because you have not got money, you have not sold it. But what does the accounting standard say? If you are using the fair value model, just assume that suppose if you sell it on the reporting date, what is the value that you will sell? So this person valuer says by December 31st, if you sell this property, you can sell it for 15 million. But I don't have that intention right now. But LKS 40 requires me to do that in terms of accounting. So my property is 10 million. Now I take it to 15 million. So what do? I need to pass a double entry. What is the double entry? I will debit my investment property with 5 million. So already there is 10 million, another 5 million going in, it will become 15 million. The corresponding credit goes into your income statement or the statement of comprehensive income, whatever you may call it, into the income statement with the name fair value gain on investment property. Okay. So by 31st December 2021, your property is now at the value of 15 million. Now let us assume that we go into 2022 end, December 2022. When you reach to December 2022, if you have opted for a fair value model, what does it mean? It requires you to again do a fair valuation. It again requires you to do a fair valuation. So what will happen? Even at the end of December 2022, you will again call for the same valuer or maybe a different valuer and request them to do a valuation. So now this person again does the valuation in December 2022. And now he gives you a report, and the fair value shown in the report is, let's say, 13 million, 13 million. Now you go and compare it with the carrying amount. What do you mean by the carrying amount? The value that you show in your financial statement. So what did you show in December 2021 with regard to this property? You had it at 15 million. Now this valuer says it is not 15 million. Now it should be 13 million. Then what should I do? I need to reduce the value of the property by 2 million. By 2 million. So what is my double entry would be? I would debit the P&L now with the name fair value loss. Previously it was gain. Now it will be fair value loss on fair valuation of investment property. And the credit will go to the investment property. So the property value will come down accordingly. Okay. So what is the complication here? When you are using or choosing the fair value model, the company is required to do a fair valuation at the end of every year. And the corresponding fair value gain or loss, it could be a gain or it could be a loss, should be recognized in the income statement or the statement of comprehensive income on an annual basis. Okay, this is one of the complications that you might have, because valuation is not easy. It is a costly exercise. So every year you will have to incur this and do the fair valuation. Okay, so I would like you all to make a note at this point in time. So please make a note. You can take down. Companies choosing the fair valuation model. Companies choosing the fair valuation model. Companies choosing the fair value model for subsequent measurement. For subsequent measurement. For subsequent measurement. For subsequent measurement are required to carry out a fair valuation, a fair valuation at the end of each reporting period. Each reporting period. This is a costly exercise. This is a costly exercise for the company. Next point. Based on the fair valuation, the company is required to recognize the resulting fair value gain or loss. The resulting fair value gain or loss. The resulting fair value gain or loss. In the income statement, or in the statement of comprehensive income, in the statement of comprehensive income, as a separate line item, as a separate line item. Okay, so when you are doing a fair valuation, it is a costly exercise that you need to do every year. But when you do it, the resulting fair value gain or loss of the valuation has to be considered, recognized in the income statement or the statement of comprehensive income. Right. So what are the disclosure requirements under investment property? Disclosure requirement is, as I mentioned to you earlier, it is the additional information that you need to provide to the reader. Choice of fair value model or cost model. So you will specify, we have selected the fair value model for investment property, or you can say we have selected the cost model for investment property. Whether property interests held as operating leases are included in investment property. So this is something to do with the operating leases. Since it is going away, we don't have to worry much about it. Criteria for classification as investment property. So can you recall the classification reason as investment property? So you will have to say whether you are holding it for rent or you are holding it for capital appreciation. Then assumptions in determining the fair value. So your valuer who will do the fair valuation for you will put down all the assumptions that he has made. Those assumptions will have to be produced to the reader together with your financial statements. Then use of an independent professional valuer. You will have to give the details pertaining to your valuer, whether he is a professional valuer, what is his qualification, all those have to be given. If you have taken this property for rent purposes, then you have to mention the rental income, or if it is the other party, for the rental expense. Further, you also have to give, if you have any restrictions or obligations. What you mean by that is, suppose if there is a restriction by the people around, where they say, no, you can't use this land for anything, you have to just give up, then there is a problem, there is a restriction. So if there are any restrictions, then you have to mention that in your financial statement, because people looking at your financial statement should have adequate information. That is what we learn under LKS 1. And finally, an entity that adopts the fair value model also disclose a reconciliation of the carrying amount of the investment property at the beginning and end of the period. This is also again very, very important. Right. So that is all about investment property. I just want to show you all the accounting part of it. Can you all see the screen? Or rather the whiteboard?
Yes, sir.
You can see the board, right?
Yes.
Right, okay. So what we learned here is actually we said investment property we spoke about investment property. Right. So under investment property, we said on September 25th, 2021, you are purchasing a property for rupees 10 million. Right. So what is the double entry that we will do? We will debit our investment property account with 10 million and cash 10 million. Okay. You all can see the screen properly, right? I'm just. Do you all see it properly?
Yes, sir. Visible.
Right. So on December 2021, as I mentioned to you, you are going to do a fair valuation. So when you are going to do a fair valuation, what happens? Your valuer is going to give you a value which we will say 15 million. So now for the 15 million, when it is 15 million, you are not going to pay any cash. So your property, which is from 10 million, now has to go up to 15 million. Go up to 15 million. So what do we do here? We increase the value by 5 million, debit investment property 5 million, and credit fair value gain or loss on investment property. You will put 5 million there. Do you understand? This is very, very important. So in the year of 2021, what will happen? You will have a 5 million coming into your P&L, which is going to be the fair value gain. So your brought forward value will be 15 million in your balance sheet, which we call it as the carrying amount. Carrying amount. Now, since we have chosen the fair value model, we are going to go into the year 2022 also, and we will request to do a fair valuation. So the fair valuation is done, and the valuer is now telling you that the property value is only 13 million. 13. So what is our objective? What is our objective? You already show 15 million in your financial statements. Now you need to bring it down to 13 million. So what do? I will credit the investment property account by 2 million. And now I am supposed to debit my fair value loss, gain or loss account by 2 million. So at the end of the year 2022, in your income statement, you will have a loss of 2 million. Whereas in the balance sheet, your carrying amount will be 13 million. 13 million. So do you understand this? Very important, because what happens in the P&L? In 2021, you will have a fair value gain of 5 million. In 2022, you will have a fair value loss of 2 million. That is how the financial statements will look like. Okay, so I would like you all to take down this for your reference purposes. Please make a note. Any questions that you have?
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah.
Can we name that account as the revaluation account?
No. Good question. Actually, you have asked a valid question. You can't call it as a revaluation account because this is not LKS 16. Under LKS 40, we have to call this as fair valuation. Okay. So when we do LKS 16, I will do somewhat similar to this. That is what is going to be called as revaluation. Okay. So don't get confused. This we call it as fair valuation.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
If there are any objections from... Yes, a very valid question has been asked. If there are any objections from, I don't know whether everybody can see that message. It's in the chat box. It says, if there are any objections from surrounding people of the property, does that directly affecting the fair value? Yes, very valid question. Now say, let us say something like this. You have brought you are a company or a business and you want to put up a factory. So you have purchased the land. And right now you have not thought about putting up the factory. So right now it is your investment property. But the moment you put up your factory, it leads to the river that is being used by the people of that area. Okay. Now, because I can give you a classic example. This happened when one of these soft drink factories, which were close to Kalani River, were trying to do this kind of a thing. Then there was a huge campaign to prohibit the soft drink company, and it had to close down actually, ultimately. So somewhat similar to that, if there is a restriction or prohibition, or maybe people are complaining about a property which is going to make a harmful damage to the people around, then at the time of the valuation, the valuer will consider that factor. Okay, so what does it mean? It actually reduces the demand for that particular land. Okay, you will lose the demand for that particular land. That is what it means. So automatically the fair value should reflect that problem. Okay, the fair valuation will reflect that problem. Now say here we said that it is 13 million. Now the moment if something is identified like that, then it might go down further. So sometimes you might not be able to sell the land also, even if you want to sell it. Okay, so there could be that kind of things also. Very, very valid question. Thanks. Thank you very much. Any other questions? Okay, if there are no questions, I would like to move to our questions, past paper questions. So let's take one by one. Let's go into this question that I gave you on last week on the sole proprietorship. We'll just have a look at that first, and then we'll come back to the bank reconciliation. Okay, right. Can we take that? Yeah, this was the question that I gave you last week under the sole proprietorship. Yeah, I wanted you all to prepare the trading account of this company. Trading account of this company. If you look at the question, it says opening inventory 100,000, purchases 672,000, carriage inwards 30,000, wages 50,000, sales 1.1 million, returns inward and then we have return outward 72,000, closing inventory 2 million, right? So how do we do this? Okay, so we have to write the topic at the top, that is trading account, and company name has to come at the top, then trading account, then you will have the for the year ended 31st March 2021. So the first line item that we will write is sales. So sales is 1.1 million. 1.1 million. Then is there a sales return? Yes, there is a return inwards less return inwards of 100,000. So that will give you a net sale of 1 million. Net sale of 1 million. Then we have to look at the cost of sales. The cost of sales. So when you look at the cost of sales, you have to start with the opening stock. The You have to start with the opening stock. So opening stock is opening inventory, which is 100,000. 100,000. Then you add the purchases, 672,000. Then you have to see whether there are any purchase returns. So return outwards, there is 72,000, right? Then what else we have? We have carriage inwards, cost of bringing in the goods, carriage inwards. So carriage inwards, it is 30,000. 30,000. Then you also have wages. Wages means the labor charges you would have paid. That is 50,000. 50,000. So have we taken all the items? Finally, you have to deduct less closing stock or closing inventory, which is 200,000. So how much is your cost of sales? How much is your cost of sales? 617,725, 580,000. Am I correct?
Yes, sir.
So you will get 580,000 as your cost of sales, which means your gross profit will be 420,000. If you have got 420,000, then you can put a right for that. Is that understood? So this is the structure how you do it. First sales, then sales in return or return inwards, then you get the net sales. Then you have to look at the cost of sales, that is opening stock. You add purchases, deduct less return outwards, add the carriage inwards, that is the transportation cost that you have to bring in the goods. Then you have wages, that is the labor charge that you would have paid to your laborers. Then finally you deduct the closing stock. So when you do that, you get the total cost of sales, which is 580,000, and from the net sales, when you deduct it, you get the gross profit, which is 420,000. Okay, right. So let's go back to the next question. Right, question number 2, where there is a trial balance given, right? So from the trial balance, you are required to do the balance sheet. I have given it as the balance sheet, but in today's context, the term is used as statement of financial position, right? But you can call it as balance sheet also. Right. So how do we do it? So I think I gave you the format. This is the format. Starting from the tangible assets, intangibles, investments, current assets, and then you get the total assets. Then you start with the capital, balance, you bring in the net profit or loss for the current year, you deduct the drawings, then the long-term liabilities, short-term liabilities or current liabilities, and then the provisions if you have, right? So when you look at this question, you need to mark first what are the assets, what are the liabilities, and what are equity components. Can you do that quickly? What are the, just on the left side, you just mark it. What are the capital accounts? What are the so capital account is the equity, land and buildings is your what? That is your tangible fixed assets. Okay, tangible fixed assets. Then there is a 14% term loan. They call it as the term loan. So term, since they have just said term loan, you can put it under long-term liabilities. Long-term liabilities. If you look at it in the template, sorry, long-term loans, you see, right? And loan from Messrs. D and Company. So here they are silent about whether this is a term loan or not. So when they are silent, you need to consider it as a short-term loan. Okay, when they are silent about it, just consider it as a short-term loan. Then trade receivable, that is a current asset. Cash in hand, current assets. Inventories in trade, current assets. Furniture, tangible fixed assets. Trade payables, current liabilities. Advances to suppliers, what do you mean by that? Advances to suppliers, what is it? Asset or liability, or what current asset or current liability, what it is?
Asset.
It's a asset, where for the suppliers you have given a part payment, so it's like a current asset. Then you have the net profit, and finally the drawings. Okay, so shall we look at how to do it? So what you can do is you can start by putting up the company name. Right, it is the Al Brothers. And and you can call it as the balance sheet. And you can say as at 31st March 2011. So what we are going to do here is we are trying to divide it into two parts. On left side you will have the assets, on right side you will have the liabilities. That is how we are going to do it. So referring to the template, we'll say tangible fixed assets. Tangible fixed assets. So we have land and building. Land and building, that is 300,000. Then we also had furnitures. $200,000. So the total there is 500,000. Then I think there are no more long-term assets, so we can straight away go to the current assets. So in that current assets also you have to go by the liquidity order. So when you go by the liquidity order, we can look at trade receivables. Oh, sorry, you have stocks, inventories, $600,000. Then you have trade receivables, 420. Then advances to suppliers. How much is that? 100,000. Then what else we have? Inventories in trade taken, cash in hand, 20. So how much is that? 71140. So you have the total assets here, that is 1640. Am I correct? Is the total assets correct?
Yes, sir.
1640. Right. Then we go to the capital and liability side. So you can say capital, that is 700,000. So if you have done it one after the other, that is you do the assets and then below that if you have done the capital and liabilities, that is also correct. Don't worry about it. That is also correct. Then you add the net profit. Net profit. So net profit is 100,000. Then you have a negative equity item. What is that? That is
Drawings.
drawings. Very good. Drawings. So drawings here it is 60, but it is a negative. So 700, 800, 800 minus 60 is 740,000. So your equity component is 740,000. So if you theoretically look at it now, how much should be the liabilities? The total liability should be how much? Without doing further, if you are to do it, you should know how much should be the total liabilities. How much is it?
900.
900,000. Very good. So it should be the difference between 1640 and the 740. Right. Let's try and do it. Long term liabilities. So long-term liabilities, you have the 14% term loan, 14% term loan, that is 400,000. Then you have a loan from, who is that? D and Company, that is 460. Then it's actually under current liabilities, though here it is 860. Under current liabilities, you have a trade payable of 40. Trade payable of 40. So that will give you again 1640. That is capital and total liabilities. Okay, capital and total liabilities.
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah,
Sir,
yeah, go ahead, go ahead.
460,000 should be coming to current liabilities now. That is loan from D
No,
and
since they have given it as just the loan, you can split it into either long-term liabilities or you can say short-term liabilities. Why I didn't take it for current liabilities is because since it is a loan, right? So generally under current liabilities, what we do is these trade payables, income tax payable, those are the ones we put, right? So let us park the loan also here, because this is like a long-term loan, this is like a short-term loan. Okay, but since they have not mentioned the time period, we don't want to take it to the current liabilities. That's why, even if you put it under current liability, there is not a problem, but just will for the benefit, like we'll have it there. Any other questions? Okay, so then we'll go to the last question where I gave you a past paper. So in that we will do only the first part, because I think the remaining part we have not covered yet. So this is the 2017 question, right? Nelum Bank PLC is currently assessing a loan application submitted by its customer. So this is something like a scenario that you might also get. A customer comes to you asking for a loan and he gives you some piece of information about their company. So if that is the case, what type of evaluation that you will do to ascertain whether this borrower is worthwhile to consider for a loan? Okay, right. Asking for a new loan of 100,000. Answer the questions based on following ledger accounts of Lotus Traders for the year ended 31st December 2016. Right. So they say sales, cost of sales, other income, operating and other expenses, fixed assets, payable water bills, current assets, current liabilities, long-term liabilities. They say loan from earlier and capital. And what are the questions? Calculate net profit of Lotus Traders. So they're asking you to calculate the net profit. Then the second question, calculate two financial ratios that are useful for assessing the repayment capacity of Lotus Traders. So still we haven't done ratios, so don't look at that question. But look at the third one. What is the applicable accounting concept for accounting of payable water bills as shown in the above financials? So there is a line item where you would see payable water bills. and it is 10,000. So they are asking you, what is the applicable accounting concept for this? And the last part, in terms of accounting, what is the main difference between current and long-term liabilities? So you see, somebody knowing the theory can easily score 5 marks, because each of these parts will have 5 marks. And if you know the theory, the last part will definitely give you the full 5 marks. Okay, but obviously as a question, if you look at it, this is a very, very simple question. You will see that. Right. So in order to calculate the net profit, just pick the items from this list. What are the items that will go into the net profit of this company? Can you just quickly go through and let me know? When I ask item by item, you have to say whether it will be yes or no. Right, sales. Yes, we have to take it because that is the revenue source. Then cost of sales. Yes, because cost of sales is actually part of your business, and that is what is being taken under gross profit. Okay, so you have to be mindful, this is a sole trader and there is a gross profit, and then only you reach the net profit. Okay, so even if the examiner has not asked about it, you should know to do it accordingly. First you calculate the gross profit and then you move to the net profit. Right, then they have other income. They have other income, so that is also going into the net profit, but not part of the gross profit. You have to remember, I told you, gross profit will be form part of only the sales. Then you have operating and other expenses, that is your overheads. Right, then thereafter you need to tell me, do we take fixed assets for the net profit calculation?
No.
No, because fixed asset is going to the statement of financial position or the balance sheet. Payable water bills, what do you think?
Yes.
It should be part of net profit or not?
Yes.
Why?
Because it's a expense.
Because it is an expense. Any other answers?
No, sir.
No. Why?
It is a liability.
Very good.
It's payable.
It's payable. You need to note that point. When you because sometimes what happens is this English language is such that you can interpret it in either way. But as an accounting student, you should know, when you say payable, it always refers to a liability. Okay, so why we should not consider part of an expense is because, yes, I understand water bills is an expense, but what do we have here? It is payable water bills. So they might have had a water bill for which they have already made a provision. So this 10,000 is payable in the next year. Payable in the next year. So it is a current liability. It is a current liability. So you might be wondering why the examiner has put payable water bills on top of giving another line item just 2 lines below, where you see current liabilities. You see, now soon after the payable water bills, you have the current assets and then current liability. So now we say payable water bills is also a current liability. Then why have they given it separately? That is where the examiner is clever. They want to confuse you. So you have to be very careful with the terminology. Just because we saw that it is payable, no. When you say payable, it should be current liability. Current liability. So why it has been given out separately? It is just to make that little bit of a confusion within the candidate. Okay, so don't get into that trap. So payable water bill is a liability. Current asset is an asset. Current liability is a liability. Long-term liability we know. Capital we know. So basically, there are only 4 items, which is sales, cost of sales, other income, operating and other expenses. So how much is the profit, net profit? How much is the net profit?
10,000.
10,000. So you have a sale of 250, cost of sale is 200. So when you deduct one by the other, you get a gross profit of 50,000. To that gross profit, you add the other income 10,000. So you had 60,000. Then you deduct the operating expenses. You end up getting a 10,000 expense. Just give me a second. Right. So this is how it will be. Sales 250, cost of sales 200, gross profit is 50. You add the other income 10 and operating other expense deducted 50,000. You get 10,000 as the net profit. Then you are required to calculate the 2 financial ratios, but we are not going to do it now. Let's go to the third question. What is the applicable accounting concept for accounting of payable water bills? So obviously it is the accrual concept. You have to remember that. Now look at this question. Just to answer accrual concept, you get 5 marks. Okay. Just think about this question. Just to say accrual concept, the answer is going to be accrual concept. Third part. For this accrual concept answer, you get 5 marks. So don't ever neglect the topics that we did initially. The concepts, assumptions, principles, types of entities. Don't ever forget those. Those might come in the form of like this, where you can just simply write it and get 5 marks. Okay. So 5 marks here, and look at the next question. In terms of accounting, what is the main difference between current and long-term liabilities? So current liabilities that a business owner must pay to a creditor within 12 months. The other one, long-term liabilities that are payable more than a year or after 12 months from the reporting date. So for writing this, you get another 5 marks. So basically, somebody not knowing the ratios, even without that, you could have easily scored 15 marks. Okay. Any questions? Do you have any questions on there? No questions. Right. So let's move to the, yeah. Let's move to the bank reconciliation questions. That is the long outstanding where you have been repeatedly asking me. So let's do that now. Take the bank reconciliation one. Right. Let's do that now. Okay. So this was the first question. We didn't do this also, no, in the class? Did we do this question? Can I get an answer?
Yes, sir.
We did this question in the class?
Yes, sir, we did.
Okay. I thought that we didn't do this. Only the second one is missing, I think, right? Right. Anyway, those who didn't do, or maybe just have a look at, this is the answer for the first one. And then we'll go to the second one quickly. Right. Let's look at the second one. So there is a cash book entry given. Then you also have the bank statement. Sorry. Just give me a second. Okay. So this is the question. Requirement is where you are required to prepare a bank reconciliation statement as at 21st January 2020 and also again on as at January 26th. So they want you to do a bank reconciliation for 2 dates of the business. Right. Now let's look at the two statements, the bank statement and the cash book. This is the cash book and this is the bank statement. Now let's go into detail and look at what are the two dates that we are talking about. First one is, they say 21st. Now look, 21st. When they ask about the 21st, what do you understand there? What are they talking about? Yes? They are talking about this 1260 rupees balance. You see, there is a caption here, balance 1260. That is what they are referring as at 21st. So in other words, the date 21st is the opening balance of the cash book and the bank statement. Because when you go to the bank statement also, you see 21st balance is here. You see? So they want you to do a reconciliation for the opening balance and the closing balance of the two statements. Opening balance and the closing balance of the two statements. So when you look at the opening balance, what do we need to reconcile? The 1260 against the 150 rupees overdraft. You see, there is a term called OD. So here they say in the cash book, you have 1260 rupees favorable balance because it's a debit balance. But whereas in the bank books, it should be a credit balance, but unfortunately, here it is an overdrawn balance. So which means it is a 150 rupees debit balance. Looks like the bank has to pay you. Looks like the bank has to pay you. Right? So how do we reconcile these two? Because we don't have any piece of information. If we are doing for the 26th, yes, what do? We will mark off the items with the bank statement and the cash book, and we will look at the remaining items, and those remaining items will form part of my bank reconciliation. But here they are talking about the opening balance. So this opening balance of 1260, there is nothing prior to that. I don't have any transactions. Here also, prior to this 150 rupees overdraft, there are no transactions given. So how am I going to do it? Has anyone done it? What do you think? Anyone? How can you identify it? No idea. Okay. So how do we identify it? Now, when you look at a cash book entry, you know what are the reconciling items? Checks deposited not yet realized, or checks issued not presented yet. These are the two reconciling items, isn't it? Checks deposited not yet realized, or checks issued not yet presented. These are the two reconciling items. So we need to find out whether there are any deposits that were made prior to 21st and getting realized subsequently. That is number one. Secondly, we have to see whether this company has issued any checks prior to 21st and getting paid after that. So those are the two things that we don't know. Because if the company had issued any checks prior to 21st, then their cash book balance would have come down. That is why it is showing 1260. But in the bank statement, it will come after 21st. Isn't it? Do you all agree with that? Do you all agree? What do you think? So, first thing that we need to see whether there are any deposits that are getting realized subsequently. Okay. Just give me a second. So if you look at this particular bank statement, you see there is a deposit on the 21st where the bank statement shows a balance of 3,250. So which means it should appear in the cash book on the debit side. Do you get that 3,250? No. Which means it has been deposited prior to 21st. Prior to 21st. Similarly, whether this company issued any checks prior to 21st. How do you identify that? Now, what you see here with the check numbers here is all issued after 21st. So, ideally speaking, the company has issued checks starting from 26, the number 26. You see the number is continuously going 27, 28, 29, 31. So, after 21st, they have started issuing checks from the number 26. If the company has issued any checks prior to this, means it should have a number before 26. So let us now look at the bank statement and see whether there are any checks. The number is before 26. Here you see. On the 24th, you have a check for 1,620 and the check number is 25. Then again on 25th, you again see another check which is 24. The number is 24 and the amount is 220. So basically, other than that, it is 31 and 35. So these are the three items that are causing a difference now. One is the deposits that not yet realized. This is the 3,250 because it is coming after this 150 overdraft balance. You see, after that, then only it is turning into a favorable balance to you. Right now, as of this situation, you need to pay to the bank, but on 21st, it is turning into a favorable balance to you. So it is this transaction and the transaction pertaining to the check number 25 and 24 that is causing this difference in the opening balance of 150 and 1,260. So when you try to reconcile those two, this is how it will look like. This is how it will look like. So I am starting from the cash book 1,260. I am adding the two checks that were issued prior to 21st because it is not yet appeared in the bank statement. Then I am going to deduct the deposit I made for 3,250 because it is coming to the bank statement only on the 21st. Therefore, when you do that, you get the 150 overdraft. Is it understood? Okay, I think this is the only complication that you might have, because this doing the reconciliation for the 26th will be correct only when you find out these three, because when you go to the reconciliation for as at 26th, you need to eliminate these three items. You should not consider these three items. It should be without these three items that you need to reconcile, or means when you are marking off these items, debits against the credits and credits against the debits, you need to leave out this 3,250, 1,620 and 220 because those will be going into the reconciliation as at 21st. Okay, so when you do the reconciliation for 26th, it will look like this. You can check for yourself. So what I have done is I have brought in everything into the single statement, the bank charges, direct deposits, everything. Okay. So what I can say is you may not get a bank reconciliation question of this kind. This is just to make you understand better and to familiarize a question of this kind. But in exams you might see the bank reconciliation questions are very, very easy. So I told you some of the past paper questions which you can attempt. Just have a look at those. Those are very, very simple compared to this particular question. Okay. So what you can do is you can again go through this. First part is this. If you want, you can take a photograph from the screen. Then the second part is like this. Okay. So with that, I think we can stop there. It's almost 5:30. So please do revise. Again, I am repeatedly telling you all. So most probably by next week, the country should open out. So I might be able to do the class from the IBSA. I'm trying to start off with the LKS 16, which is an important accounting standard. So we need to catch up a little bit because since we were away from classes for about 3 weeks, so we need to do a little bit of catch up. So next week, let's meet up for the bank reconciliation. If you have any questions, you can ask before you leave.